Welcome to another episode of Explained by AI. Today we're diving deep into Mocro Maffia, the show. It's gripping, yeah, but how much is based on reality? We'll be looking at the characters and who they're based on, the real people behind this whole crime drama.
Well, the whole thing, this whole Mocro Maffia conflict, it all starts with a massive cocaine shipment that gets stolen in Antwerp. 2012, I think it was.
Okay, so that's the spark that sets everything off.
Yeah, and the thing is, there's so much mystery around it. Like, who actually stole it? How much was even taken? Some people even say the police might have been involved. Corrupt.
Wow, so right from the start, it's all about trust, or the lack of it. And that definitely comes across in the show.
Absolutely. And, out of this chaos come the two main figures, the guys at the heart of the conflict, Wynette Martha and Hussein 8S. They were friends, at least at first. But things went sour, really sour, and it turned into a rivalry, a deadly one.
So let's talk about Gwinnett Martha. He's the inspiration for Mandela Wee Wee, right? I mean, his story's wild. From street footballer, dreaming of playing for Ajax, to a major crime lord, the man without a shadow, they called him.
Yeah, that nickname, it really says it all, doesn't it? Like, he was untouchable, almost mythical. He knew how to stay hidden, how to stay in control. For a while, anyway. But, both Martha and Mandela Wee Wee, they both end up assassinated, shot to death.
It's a reminder that the violence we see on screen, it's not just for show. This stuff really happened. And speaking of blurred lines between reality and fiction, there's Depauus. I've read so many different theories about who he's based on. Some say Ridwan Taghi.
Right, because Taghi, he's like this mastermind pulling strings from the shadows. He's a ghost, practically. Hard for the police to catch him.
Makes sense. But I've also heard people say Depauus is more like Benof A, because he's known for being super aggressive, confronting his enemies head on.
Yeah, that definitely lines up with how Depauus is portrayed, like, always ready for a fight.
So maybe the writers took inspiration from both of them, like a mix of Taghi and Benof, created this super complex character. Now, where does Potlid fit in?
Well, most people think he's based on Hussein 8S. Remember, he was close with Martha at the beginning.
Right.
But just like in the show, their relationship explodes. It's a huge falling out. And 8S, he sides with Benof.
Another layer of complexity.
Absolutely. And both Potlid and 8S, they were both, serious players in the criminal world, dangerous guys. 8S eventually had to skip town, fled the Netherlands to avoid being prosecuted.
These real-life connections, the shifting alliances, it's crazy how much the show mirrors it all. It really shows just how volatile that world is. No loyalty, just survival. Then you have Mies, whose story is just tragic.
Yeah, Muse is based on a real guy, Rita Benajam. Like Muse, he gets caught in the crossfire of this whole war, the Mocro Maffia war, and he ends up dead. Another victim, senseless really, his death, just like so many others in this whole conflict.
The fact that it's all based on real events makes the show even more powerful, more disturbing.
For sure.
And then there's Tada. Now he seems like a real wild card, right?
Oh yeah, total loose cannon. A lot of people think he's based on Chris Bowman. He was another Dutch criminal, big in the cocaine trade. And, his behavior, well, it was unpredictable, to say the least. Both Bowman and Tada, they were complex figures, both feared and respected, but both met a pretty bad end, kind of mirroring Tada's descent into chaos.
So the writers, it seems like they really captured the personalities of these guys, these larger-than-life figures. And then we have Adil, the kickboxer. He's got ties to both sides, the legal world and the criminal underworld.
It's like Badur Hari, the famous kickboxer. He's had his own issues with the law. Rumors of connections to criminals, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I remember hearing about him. It's that whole thing of fame and fortune and how it can lead you down a dark path.
That gray area is definitely something the show explores.
And on the other side of the law, we have Advocate Wook, right? The lawyer defending some of these guys.
Oh, yeah. She's clearly based on Inez Walewski. She's a big-time lawyer in the Netherlands, known for defending some pretty controversial clients, including Ridwan Taghi, actually.
Walewski, she's been criticized for who she represents, but she's always defended her clients no matter what they're accused of. She's stuck by them.
Yeah, and it makes you think, doesn't it, about the ethics of defending people who might be guilty of terrible things.
Not heavy stuff.
Definitely.
Okay, and then finally we have Tanano. He seems legit, running a business and all, but he's tangled up in this whole criminal web.
He's a lot like Khalid J. They call him Shanuf. He was involved in sports and organized crime, used his connections in both worlds to get ahead. Sounds familiar, right?
So it seems like nearly every character in Mocro Maffia is rooted in reality. They've obviously taken some liberties, combined characters, changed things up a bit. But the core, it's all there.
It's like they took bits and pieces of reality and built this whole world, this story. Mocro Maffia, it's not just a show, it's a reflection of what's really going on out there, in the criminal world, a world that most of us, we don't really see.
But the show brings it to life, right in front of us, makes you realize just how much is happening in the shadows.
It makes you wonder, what choices lead people to a life like that?
Yeah, no kidding. And, the show is violent, but the real story,
Yeah.
from what I've read, it was even worse. The Mocro Maffia, they were brutal, like no respect for human life at all.
Yeah, all those assassinations, the heavy weapons, innocent people getting caught in the crossfire, it's scary stuff. And that shooting in 2012 in Amsterdam, the Stotsliedenbert shooting, that was a big turning point, I think.
In broad daylight, right?
Yeah.
A crowded neighborhood, hard to believe they were that brazen. And they even shot at the police when they tried to chase him.
Yeah, it was a shock, for sure. Really showed how dangerous things were getting. And then there's Luana Luz Xavier. She was a young mother, shot right in front of her kids.
Awful, just awful. They didn't care who they hurt, Even innocent people. I can't imagine what those kids went through.
These guys, they weren't just settling scores. They wanted to scare everyone, to show they were in charge, that the law didn't apply to them.
And then you have Nabil Amzib finding his head severed outside a shisha bar. I mean, come on.
Yeah, that was savage. Like something out of a movie. Putting it out there like that, it was a message, a way of showing their power,
That's like a glimpse into the dark side of humanity. The stuff most of us don't even want to think about.
But it's important to remember that it happens. Even in places that seem civilized, we have to be careful, protect ourselves and our communities from organized crime.
Definitely. And the impact on Dutch society from this whole Mocro Maffia conflict, it's been huge.
Yeah, people don't trust the police as much. They worry about the law, whether it can actually deal with these guys. And it creates this atmosphere of fear where people are afraid to speak up, afraid of becoming targets.
You see that in the show too, right? Everyone's paranoid, always looking over their shoulder, never knowing who to trust.
Yeah, it's a world where loyalty can disappear in a second. One wrong move, and you're dead.
It's a reminder that this stuff, it's real. It's happening out there.
And we can't just ignore it. We have to do something about it.
Absolutely. We have to fight back against organized crime. But how? Where do you even start?
Well, for one thing, we have to understand why it happens in the first place. Things like poverty, lack of opportunity, people feeling left out, that creates an environment where crime can thrive.
Makes sense. So it's not enough to just catch the criminals. We have to change the conditions that allow them to exist.
Exactly. It's a complex problem that needs a complex solution. We need to support the police, but we also need to invest in education, create opportunities for young people, build stronger communities.
Give people a chance to succeed without turning to crime.
Exactly. Give them hope. Show them there's another way.
Mocro Maffia, the show, did a good job of bringing this issue to light.
Yeah, for sure. It's gotten people talking, made them aware of what's going on, made us face some hard truths.
And hopefully it'll inspire some real change.
I hope so. We need to work together to create a world where organized crime doesn't have this kind of power. A world where stories like this, they're just stories, not reality.
We can't be complacent. We all have a part to play in building safer, more just communities.
Yeah, and sometimes, the stories that seem the most made up, they actually tell us the most about ourselves and the world we live in. Mocro Maffia, it's one of those stories.
It sticks with you, that's for sure.
Yeah, makes you think. And if you want a show that's both entertaining and thought-provoking, I'd say check it out.
Yeah.
Be warned, it gets pretty intense.
It pulls you in to this world that's fascinating and terrifying at the same time.
Yeah, and it reminds us that our choices matter. They have consequences not just for us, but for everyone around us.
It's a powerful message.
For sure. And in the end, we all have the power to choose a different path, to build a better future.
It really makes you think, how a show, something made up, can get people talking about real problems.
That's the power of stories, right? When they're done well, they can show us ourselves, even the parts we don't like, make us question things.
And Mocro Maffia, it definitely does that.
Yeah.
It's not just about the crime, it's about the people, the choices they make, and how those choices, they affect everyone.
And it shows how messed up the system is, and that leads to organized crime, poverty, no jobs, people feeling like they don't belong. That's what these criminal gangs feed on.
So we can't just go after the criminals, we have to fix those problems too, if we want to really stop it.
Exactly. It's not a simple problem, so there's no simple solution. We need the police to do their job, but we also need to invest in education, give young people a chance, and build communities that are strong, support each other.
Give people hope. Show them there's another way to live.
Right. A better way.
Well, I think we've covered a lot today. We talked about the stolen cocaine, the rivalries, and the impact all this has had on the Netherlands.
Yeah, and that's really just scratching the surface. This whole world, Mocro Maffia, both the show and the real thing, it's complicated.
It's fascinating, though. If you're interested in learning more, I'd say do some digging. There are tons of resources out there.
Yeah, go down the rabbit hole. It's worth it.
Do you have any topic that you would like to have explained? Drop it in the comments.